Hello dear viewers. This is the story of Lytuky, a girl with a mysterious past who survived the tragic accident that took her entire family. As the truth gradually comes to light, she becomes the target of a crime boss who once murdered her parents to cover up his sins. But with the unwavering protection of Officer Henry, Lytuky is no longer alone. She decides to stand up, expose the bloody past, and fight for justice. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to support us. The wind howled through the cracks of the interrogation room, creating a cold and haunting sound. A yellow light dangled from the ceiling, casting a stark glow on the pale face of the captured underling. His hands were tightly cuffed, his body hunched in the metal chair, sweat soaking through his shirt as his eyes nervously avoided Henry's steely gaze. Henry stood across the table, silent for a moment, staring so intensely it felt like he could pierce through the man's soul. Suddenly, his hand slammed down on the steel table, making the criminal flinch. "Talk! Who ordered the hit on Lytuky? Why is she the target?" The man swallowed hard, trembling, his eyes darting around the room like he still couldn't believe he'd been caught. His voice cracked, each word seeming like a death sentence. It was the boss. He gave the order. Because she's the daughter of the former CEO of Song Company. Henry's eyes narrowed. What? CEO Lytutien? The underling nodded rapidly, eyes red and watery. Yes, it was him. Mr. Ly discovered a devastating secret about our boss years ago. To keep it hidden, the boss had the entire Ly family eliminated. But he didn't expect the girl to survive. The room fell into a bone-chilling silence. Henry clenched his fists, fury igniting in his chest. Lytuky, the gentle, innocent girl he had vowed to protect, was now revealed to carry a legacy far more dangerous than anyone had known. She wasn't just a witness. She was the only surviving heir of a once powerful company, and the key to toppling the empire the crime boss had built on blood and lies. The underling hung his head low, mumbling as if the weight of the truth was crushing him. We were ordered to eliminate her as soon as possible. The boss said that if she ever uncovered the truth, everything would fall apart. He said there's no room for forgiveness. Henry gritted his teeth, his eyes burning with rage. So this was it. The mystery behind the relentless attacks, the surveillance, the fear Lytuky had been living with for years, it all led back to one man's desperate effort to bury his past sins. Just then, the door to the interrogation room opened. One of Henry's colleagues stepped in with a tense expression. "Captain, there are signs the boss is preparing to flee the city." Henry stood up immediately. He glanced once more at the trembling man before him, then turned to his colleague. "We can't let him escape. And Lytuky, make sure she's completely safe." The light in the room flickered, but the truth had already come to light. That night, a new chapter began, marked by a confession that would lead to a fierce battle between justice and corruption, between love and vengeance. See, the powerful man revered by the business world and praised by the media was in fact the mastermind behind a bloody curtain, step by step building an empire through unimaginable schemes. No one would ever suspect that behind the well-tailored suits, behind the friendly handshakes and charming smiles in front of the cameras, hid a soul steeped in unspeakable crimes. Years ago, he was merely a loyal assistant to Mr. Lytutien, the CEO of Tan Song Company, a reputable giant in the construction and real estate industry. But greed and an insatiable thirst for power slowly corrupted him. When he discovered that Mr. Ly had obtained evidence of his involvement in an illegal deal, he saw no other way but to silence the threat. He didn't just want to destroy the evidence, he wanted to erase the entire family that once took him in. The tragic car accident that year, which made headlines across the country, was publicly declared to be the result of a rainy night and a lost steering wheel. But behind the twisted wreckage was a carefully calculated plan. A disguised murder. What no one knew was that the family's only daughter, young Lytuky, had miraculously survived after being rescued by roadside villagers and later placed in an orphanage under the label "no known relatives." Thinking he had wiped away all dangers, he confidently rose to the pinnacle of power. Loyal shareholders of Mr. Ly were gradually pushed out, the Tan Song brand was rebranded, and the company was rebuilt under a new, shiny name, clean, polished, and completely devoid of any trace of its true founder. He constructed his entire business empire on the blood of his former mentor. But fate has its own plans. Years later, Lytuky, a girl haunted by vague memories of a stormy night, began to feel something was amiss. Recurring dreams, flickering images in her mind, and the constant feeling of being followed, all pushed her to seek the truth. Her search began to uncover dark secrets, and it brought her dangerously close to the shadow he had spent years hiding. When the crime boss learned that the girl from his past had survived and was digging into the old case, he panicked. For the first time in years of living behind a perfect mask, he felt genuine fear. A dangerous seed had sprouted, and if that girl discovered the whole truth, everything he had built, his entire legacy, could collapse in a single night. He couldn't allow that to happen. A silent order was issued, swift, clean, and untraceable. She had to be eliminated. But what he failed to consider was that Lytuky was no longer alone. She now had Henry, a man who had sworn to protect her at all costs. And destiny, once it begins to turn, is not easily stopped. The night air was heavy with tension as Henry stood by the window of the safe house, eyes scanning the forest that surrounded them like a fortress. Moonlight filtered through the thick canopy above, casting fragmented shadows on the wooden floor. Inside, Lytuky sat quietly by the fireplace, clutching a faded photograph of her parents, the only thing left from a past she could barely remember, yet was now central to a storm that threatened everything. Henry had heard many confessions in his career, but none had shaken him like this. The truth was no longer just a puzzle to solve, it had become personal. Lytuky was no longer just a witness. She was the last link to a family destroyed in cold blood. And now, She was the one person who could expose the powerful man who had hidden behind luxury, influence, and death. He turned to look at her, her eyes red from crying, her frame fragile yet composed, like someone who had cried enough for a lifetime. She looked up at him, the fire reflecting in her gaze. "Henry," she whispered, "am I just a target now? A threat that needs to be erased?" "No," he said firmly, walking over to her. He knelt down in front of her, his voice low but fierce. "You are not a threat. You are the truth. And I will not let them take that or you away." For the first time that night, she allowed herself a moment of trust. She reached out and held his hand. There was something grounding in his touch, something that told her she wasn't alone in this anymore. That moment of stillness didn't last long. His phone vibrated with a secure message. He read it, then stood up, jaw clenched. "They're closing in," he said. "We have to move." They gathered their things quickly. Every second counted. Henry had called in favors from trusted allies, and a small, elite task force was now on the move, hunting the man responsible for the death of the Ly family, the man who was now trying to disappear once more, like a shadow melting into darkness. As the car sped down a hidden mountain road, Henry spoke into a secure radio, issuing orders. "We intercepted Point Delta. Do not engage until I give the signal. The girl's safety is priority number 1. Lytuky sat beside him, watching the trees blur past. The closer they got to the final confrontation, the stronger the storm inside her grew. She wasn't just afraid, she was furious. For years, she had been lied to, hidden away, chased like a criminal for simply being alive. But now, with Henry beside her, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: power. Not the kind built on money or corruption, but the power of truth, and the courage to face it. As dawn began to break, painting the sky in hues of silver and crimson, they reached the location. A private helipad near the outskirts of the city, the last known exit route of the crime boss. The task force moved in, surrounding the area like wolves circling their prey. Henry turned to Lytuky, eyes soft but unwavering. "Are you ready to face him?" She nodded. "Yes. I need to look into his eyes, the man who destroyed my family, and let him know he failed." What followed was swift and precise. The boss never made it to the helicopter. Cornered, stripped of his men, and exposed for what he truly was, he tried to talk his way out, but Henry silenced him with one line: "You made one mistake. You left a survivor." As the sun rose fully over the city, justice was no longer just a word, it had a face, a name, and a future. Lytuky stepped into the light, no longer a girl haunted by the past, but a woman standing tall, with the truth on her side, and Henry by her side.